The boardwalk beyond the floating bridge is now quite deteriorated because of water backup in the marshy area there. So I think if we do come early next year to the point where we're putting a bridge up across, that will all have to be, my feeling is, on floating boardwalk, actually, so that it can rise with the tide. What next? On the west side of the Beaver Dam, about 50 meters west of the dam itself, is a prominent channel now leading water south into the marsh on the Stevenson farm. So where that copse of cedar trees it is, there's now a lot of beaver feeding activity. So a lot of poplars down deeper toward the bush than there was, and I would think a lot of that is just them getting their food supply ready for winter. But I do wonder if it mightn't be a good idea to get us to walk into that area. It isn't really our property, but to try to figure out what might be going on back there too, and to make the Stevensons aware that that is happening. And then earlier in the month, I walked all along, right on the bank of the creek, off trail, just following the bank exactly, just to try to make sure that there wasn't any new dam building or any new lodge building right on the main part of the creek. And I walked with Dan all the way to the old railway bridge that way, through all the oxbows and everything, and didn't find anything. There are a lot of old dams along the creek, some of which look as if they were never disrupted, but something must have happened to the beavers. And let's see, everything other than the erosion that is happening on the rail bed itself, overlying the old railway bridge, everything about Cedar, Grand Trunk, everything around the trout ponds was in good repair when I saw it. Same thing about Roots Revival was in good shape. Trenchtown was in good shape. Backstage Pass was in good shape. I did walk between Meadow Trail and the loops of Backstage Pass, deep behind the first row of spruce trees. There's quite a lot of dog strangling vine in there, much more than I can manage manually. So if we decide to do it again next year, we'll have Sean go in there and really sock it to that dog strangling vine. I did pull out 6 or 7 bags in total manually of dog strangling pod before it went to seed. And this was stuff that either I hadn't seen before or hadn't been able to direct Sean to, because he couldn't get to it on his ATV. So the stuff between the spruce trees and the Backstage Pass Trail, he will be able to use plantation forest lanes, spacing to get through, I believe. So he won't have to do too much walking to get in there now that I've found it. So I'll mark that off with colored tape through the winter so that he can take a walk through the winter and get a sense of where I want him to be. And I haven't been out on Gani Transit. I think probably for 3.5 weeks. So Hillary, if you've been out there since then, have you been out there?
No, unfortunately, I didn't get that far. I did like Cedar Trail, and that seemed okay. But yeah, November definitely was a busy month.
So when I was out there 3.5 weeks ago, it was fine. There's still glass that occasionally comes up at the old dump site, just as you're meeting fire route 310. So everybody, just pick it up when you see it. I wouldn't just throw it off trail, because enough dogs go off trail that we wouldn't want them getting into trouble all the way out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did a little more walking off formal trails between the fairgrounds and the old Beaver Dam on the north side. Which looks very promising. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything else. Has anybody else other than Hillary and myself been out since the big windstorm on other trails to see whether there's any big windfall?
Yeah, just to give you an update, I've been on everything except for Meds Mountain area.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave and I know cleaned up some smaller sticks and everything on some of the other trails. The only one that had a big situation was at the far end of Gani Transit out towards the Ganaraska. And I went out with two of my buddies, and we cleaned up a substantial poplar that had come down, I guess, alongside the trail, but it's all fixed up. Everything's all clear now. Can't see with the snow, but everything underneath the trails are pretty good, except I haven't seen Meds probably in a couple of months. So, but I know everything else is doing really well.
Good stuff.
Dave also, I think, did some repair work for some water that was kind of popping up on Cedar. Probably still needs a little more work. I think we were talking about it, but he put an improvement in it for sure.
Yeah, I can just comment on that. I don't know if Maureen, you probably noticed just how wet Cedar Trail has been this year, coming down to the duckboard section there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went in maybe a week ago with some big old pipe and found the spring. So there's a spring at the top of the wet area, and just sort of directed it instead of down the trail, just to the side of the trail. But it looks like I didn't get 100% of it. So because I didn't quite know what I was working with until I got into it, I could have done a better job of getting it right at the source. And so a little bit is leaking past the Big O and still coming down the trail a bit. But I'd say like 90% of it has been redirected. So anyway, so mostly resolved, but a little touch up to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I also, sorry, just one last thing. I'm just looking at my notes here. There's off the meadow extension, there's a hiker pointed it out to me. There's a paddle tied to a tree. And I wonder if it's related to the pink ribbon that was wrapped around some of the trees there. It looks like the neighboring property has created a side trail off meadow extension. And I haven't confirmed this, but they said that there is a rental tiny house in there, and they're giving direct trail access to our trail from there. So I don't know if there's any concerns about that, but just, something to be aware of.
I think since they're entering elsewhere than where our signage is, it might be. Is there any evidence of vehicles coming out, like dirt bikes or anything like that, coming out from their property?
No, I didn't, and I didn't look closely. But to me, based on the fact that they've used pink ribbon and tied a paddle to a tree for directions, it feels like it's more of a rustic experience. So right. I don't know if we have to be too worried about that. But yeah.
And yeah, Maureen, where was that part of the boardwalk? That was on Baxter Creek, right?
Well, the shifty
Right.
boardwalk, I mean, it's really deteriorating quickly since the beavers came, is between the floating bridge and the first ground you hit on
Yeah.
beyond the floating bridge. That part of the boardwalk is really messed up. Very deteriorated over the summer.
Yeah.
Um,
I was impressed there. I didn't see a lot of garbage on Meds or Baxter, but I did notice that there was right at the like Distillery Street area parking lot, the garbage there was overflowing. I don't know how, which is great to see that the trails are clean, but that garbage definitely needs to be maybe more.
No, that was just a result of the hockey club doing their cleanup.
Oh,
So
okay.
It's
that's all fine.
fantastic, right?
Oh, perfect.
That's cool.
I thought we took our garbage out, but maybe one of the guys put that there. I actually helped with that. That was the Bantam group.
Very good.
Yeah, thanks for that, Greg.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay. Well, if there's no more comments on the trail report, that sort of leads us into the next item on the agenda, which is the trail rerouting due to the beaver activity.
Yeah.
So,
Robert, I was just going to mention one thing real quick. Nothing immediate, but I've been having my eyes on a couple of standing dead poplars on Station right between the two bridges. So something to keep an eye on, right kind of like on the west side of the municipal yard there.
Okay.
So I checked them after the windstorm and they're still up, but there's two standing dead poplars. So eventually they're probably going to come down or I don't know if it was something to deal with, but pretty close. Just wanted to mention that.
yeah, actually, now that you mention it, there's a dead standing poplar just at the end of the boardwalk coming into Meds from the old school. But it's fairly stable and it's kind of far off the trail, but it should probably come down next April, assuming we'll be able to have some form of work day with the committee. But it's in no immediate danger. Okay. All right. So John and/or Dave, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you've been doing around the rerouting of the trail?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if John was waiting for me to chime in there. John, did you want
I
to talk
was.
about
Go
it,
ahead,
or?
Dave.
Okay. So we, with Rob's permission, we started working on a reroute trail that would connect from the area Maureen was describing with the aging boardwalk on Baxter Creek. It would connect from the opposite side of the creek there to the fairgrounds. So there's actually an old beaver dam where if you're brave, you can get yourself across that old beaver dam right now. And then we've roughed in a trail that would go from that area, which is essentially very close to the end of Ann Street, if you're looking from above. And and then right to the bottom of this sort of steep fairgrounds hill when you enter from that point. And so it's flagged and it is cleared, like leaf blown and branches and small trees have been cleared, but it hasn't really been shaped at all. So it is difficult to walk on, a little bit lopsided, like just off camber. So that's something that we would like to keep working on, but we don't know how much point there is in doing too much work there until the bridge is done, or what. But anyway, we've got started there. It is walkable for now. It's a little bit hidden from the fairgrounds end, just so everyone wouldn't just start wandering down it. And it's hidden from the other end too because it's on the opposite side of the creek. But it is passable for those who know it's there.
It's going to be really nice.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
it's a pretty spot. Just how you you're above the creek, but you can still see the creek in spots. And yeah, I think it'll be great.
Yeah, so thanks to Dave and John for doing the initial legwork on that. So one of the things we need to look at in the spring is obviously putting a proper bridge over that area. We'll need to work with Orca in terms of getting the right permits and the time of year. But we've got one piece of steel large enough already at the long enough already at the works yard that should span that distance. So it would be a case of buying another piece of steel and the main issue of bringing it down to that spot. But once the steel is in place, the wood part goes fairly quickly. But that would be something that we'd want to focus on in the spring as early as we can, depending on what we're able to do, obviously, from a COVID point of view in terms of what's going on at that point. But yeah, that'll be one of our main focuses in 2021. I would hope to be able to complete that and advertise it and potentially reroute it. Now, again, it falls into the realm of the brochure space. We're only going to have a few brochures printed. I mean, a few hundred, so that when that change gets made, we can properly update the maps, etc. And I would like to wait until that happens, until we produce the new trailhead maps, which will also be part of our redesign in terms of our branding. So that being said, anything else? Any discussion around that? Any thoughts, comments?
So I really like the new trail layout. I think it's going to be really lovely. I think there are some possible lookouts that are a bit obscured by some scrappy kind of trees. So it might be that that in a couple places, I thought if just a couple cedars small cedars could be removed, you'd get a better view of the creek. I hate to remove trees, but they could be moved. They don't have to be removed. They're young enough. There is, for educational purposes, about a third or almost a half of the way down this new trail, there is a narrow part of the creek that a very narrow footbridge could be put across that would allow you to walk 10 or 15 feet and see the full-on face of the beaver dam, the new intact beaver dam. So for educational purposes, that might be an interesting thing. I don't think I would encourage people going over there on their bikes. It might be something that they could leave their bikes off trail and walk across, but I don't know. Anyway, just a thought. With regards to beavers, I'm wondering if there's someone local with drone video capability who could send a drone up above the trail and the creek and show us exactly where all those channels are going. Because I'm a little bit worried about what Dave has said about, and as he says it, I agree, the trails just generally all the way along Baxter Creek being wetter, quite far away from where the dam is. In a summer where we didn't really have, that much rain. I'd like to get a sense of what we're dealing with. And I wonder if there would be an amateur videographer around who wouldn't charge us, would just do it for the fun of doing it.
Yeah, Kirk's probably already got that done.
Okay.
He takes a lot of drone shots up around there, so I could certainly ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, and I think to your previous point, Maureen, I think more detailed planning of what exactly we're going to do and where. We can discuss in the spring when it gets closer to time of possible construction.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Meredith, remind me, in order to be able to possibly put in cement footings along the creek, we need to do that fairly early on. Is that correct?
I will have to double check on that, but as long as you're out, as long as you're not in the water, you can do it whenever. It's the in-water works that have the restrictions. So that's a cold water stream. So they're spawning in the fall. So I believe it's March 1st to September 30th. You can do work, but I can double check that for you.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to be in the water.
Yeah.
It'd
And
be
I think in
very-
the past you've stayed out of the water, so it made permitting a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think from what I've looked at so far, my plan would be to have a build very similar to the Fairgrounds Bridge we did in the memory of John Selleck about 5 years or so ago.
Yeah.
Maybe
With the
not
sauna tubes.
sono tubes, concrete footings, maybe not as elaborate in terms of the buttresses and the width, but that sort of idea. Absolutely. I mean, that's, we've discussed previously, that's how we want to go ahead. Any new bridges or bridge replacements, try to do steel if it permits, because just of the longevity, right? And now hopefully that Mr. Trump will no longer be in office. Steel might be a bit cheaper come the spring as well. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions around that?
One thing, that area of when there is a spring fair, that area of the fairgrounds trail gets heavier use, and I'm sure John and Dave noticed that there's a lot of garbage in the area. Part of it is fairgrounds and just local use related, but there was a habit of dumping household goods over the cliff. So there's a sculpture garden of rusty relics of kitchen appliances of the 20th century at one point on the trail. And I mean, those will be much less obvious when there's foliage on the trees, and they're heavy steel, so they would be really heavy to move. But there is also quite a bit of broken glass. So I think we'll have to do a real cleanup there, even before bridge building.
Okay, well.
And
again,
that's just old,
yeah,
old habits of use.
we'll see how it plays out in the spring in terms of what we're able to do. But yeah, all
Okay.
good things to keep in mind. Okay. Anything else on that? Any other discussion?
I was just going to mention to Maureen, I'm not entirely sure exactly what you might be looking for in terms of the drone surveys, but just a note, I'm not sure if you've tried the Peterborough County Public GIS to see if that meets some of your needs, because they have high resolution aerial imagery from 2018 that you can view, as well as with the context of the province's airborne LiDAR survey. For
That
Peterborough.
might be nice for comparison, because we'd be able to see if Kirk's already sending drones up to see what's being done, what's happened recently because of the beavers. We can compare it to the 2018.
I'd have a look, because it's what's interesting is with the airborne LiDAR data, you get actually terrain information below the canopy of the trees. So you can see topography and terrain in extreme detail. So that might be I just thought it might be of interest. I just wanted to point it out to you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, number 8.2, bicycles on lower and upper meds. So this is something I brought up in the last 4 or 5 days. Alex, John, and Dave and I have sort of discussed at length. Just because of the proximity of my house, I've noticed a lot more mountain bikers on upper and lower meds. I'm sure some of it is due to COVID. I'm sure some of it's due to our increased sort of marketing. But my concern is that the infrastructure of those boardwalks, etc., really can't handle bicycles on those parts of our trails. And it's our heaviest walking trails, and it's really narrow, and there's some blind spots, so it's really not a good mixed use trail in opinion. And, we'd already discussed at some point, there may be another mountain bike trail that would connect to Meds Park from, the fairgrounds, but, that's not there yet. Anyway, we had a couple signs made that I put at both trailhead entrances. It says no bikes allowed. I've tried to talk to some people. Some people adhere, some people just ignore me and go anyway. It's all ages of people. It's a lot of kids, but it's a lot of adults too. And it's just, the issue that Maureen spoke about earlier in terms of the damage to the S boardwalk, that happened in October. And that was a result of, I believe, bikes sort of hitting it quite hard and rolling quite hard and doing jumps or whatever it may be. So I'm saying that at this point, there's probably not a lot that we need to do. I mean, I think the snow is going to keep them off regardless. I don't know that this snow is going to go away, but I think it's maybe something we need to keep in mind. Certainly the new trailhead signs will help. Additional signage. I've talked to some people about, maybe putting a post barrier at the first bridge on Lower Meds in the same way that we did at the agricultural grounds to be able to stop bicycles at that point, but they're still going across one sort of bridge at that point and still going, 400 or 500 meters in on the trail, and could potentially go up on Upper Meds. So Alex is looking into changing some stuff online to identify more of mixed use trail use and pedestrian only trail use. And certainly that's something we can call out as a say on, which will be made more clear on the trailheads and the brochures rather than the trailhead signs. But I just wanted to bring it up as a point so we can maybe keep it all in mind and keep an eye on it at this point, probably in the spring, to see what happens. Because I don't, again, anticipate much happening over the winter. But thoughts?
So, Rob, I can just maybe reiterate some of the stuff that that I told you offline, or said to you offline. One is that particular stretch of boardwalk that got broken. I believe that it could have been related to a particular bike incident, but I think that probably the age of the structure was the biggest issue there. It's not in a particularly sort of high speed, high impact area of a trail, being sort of a flat, curvy, slippery boardwalk. So just to sort of, I don't know, speak up on behalf of the bikers on that one. I think in general, there's a lot of people that are hearing about mountain biking in Millbrook right now. There's a lot of buzz, especially, with Gani Transit becoming quite successful, leading more people into the Ganaraska. That then spawned this whole refurbishment of the Ganaraska trails by the Peterborough Trail Builders Association. And then they've built a bunch of new ones that are right off of Gani Transit out at the far end there. And so what I think is happening, because as a group, and we have a Facebook page for the mountain bikers and an Instagram account, and nobody's ever sending anyone to Meds Mountain. That's not what people are looking for. And so, as far as the communication goes from, those who are most serious about the sport, everyone's kind of going out that way. What I think is probably happening though is that, so-and-so tells someone else that, hey, there's, great mountain biking in Millbrook now, and you can connect to the Ganaraska, and, just look up the trails in Millbrook, and then people Google Millbrook trails. And if you Google Millbrook trails, you'll find the Meds Mountain trailhead. That's where Google will send you. And so that's an important thing for maybe Alex to see if we can fix. I think that's part of it, this sort of confusion, or not misinformation, just lack of proper guidance. And I think, the average sort of mountain biker like John and myself is, maybe we're going out for 10 or 20K. And so anything you're doing around the Meds loop, especially with Baxter Creek being closed and impassable, it's not, anyone who's coming and doing that who's a more serious mountain biker is probably not going to come back and do it again because that's not what they came for. But I think you do have the problem of, especially local kids, local people that are just sort of riding down from, or riding over from anywhere in town, really, and just sort of picking up a short loop and riding home. That's maybe who we'd be targeting, or we should be targeting with, information or redirection. But yeah, I think it's a communication problem that we have, and it's a result of us suddenly becoming a very attractive destination to people from in town and outside of town, really sort of faster than any of us were ready for. So anyway, just sort of.
So I agree with the majority of your comments. I will say a couple things. I have seen more than a few, what I would call, I guess, professional mountain biker types with sort of, it's not just sort of your everyday bikers and your kids. Have gone. And the other thing I mentioned, the other thing I would say is that the mountain bikers, they're not all just doing the loop, because they will go in and they will disappear, meaning they don't come back out at either upper and lower. And so they're obviously going across and meeting up with at the fairgrounds, etc.
So you're just like walking through, like it's tough to get through there without getting not only wet, but like disgustingly muddy wet.
It's all doing stuff that we don't want done to the trails, right?
Yeah, I guess my only counterpoint to that is that I don't see anybody wanting to do that. Like, they might do it once because they thought that was the only way, but I can't see them ever doing it again, because it really is. Like, I've tried to walk through there with my kids and like with rubber boots on. And it's just, there's no way that it's ever nice, and I want to do it again.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, but I do, and I, for sure there'd be some people that are just going to do whatever they're going to do, and it's it's like the ATV guys, where like the people that are most supportive and most pro ATV say that we're not like the bad apples that are causing all this damage, and so maybe that's just sort of what I'm saying too. But I just have a hard time imagining anyone that would want to do that more than once.
So if it's okay, Robbie, just to comment on that, I agree with both of you. I think that there's a directional information challenge, but I also know that there's a structural challenge with some of the trails on the Meds Loop. If you look at the trails that are most heavily used by mountain bikes on the Millbrook Valley Trail System, they're in some of the best shape. I don't know if you'd agree, like Maureen, you've been on, for the trail report. And so what we're finding is, aging infrastructure, is obviously playing a problem, but that's not an excuse for, having bikes on there. If there are people, Rob, that locally, like if you know who they are, I don't mind having a conversation with them. I think I messaged you on that. I think it's a big, it's important to get that information across and just let them know in a good way. We don't want to have a bad reputation in the biking community. They take great pride in the trails. The major cleanup that actually was done on the trails that were, had the most damage, the Ganney Transit that we did our trail report on. We probably spent 3 hours or more with all mountain bikers that cleaned them up. So there's definitely an interest in well-maintained and looking after trails. So I think it's just, getting that communication, redirecting to the spots that they should be enjoying. And at the same time, maybe just letting them know some of the things that have been damaged, and maybe we can contribute to fixing some of those. And if we know that there's local kids, I have teenage boys, and, sometimes those things come out on who's riding where they shouldn't be. And I have no problem, maybe getting some of those individuals together for some community service hours or some work to repair anything, if you see that going on, with a pleasant conversation with their parents and the boys, just to talk about, looking after our trails. So we're totally open to work with you on it and get that message to the mountain biking community, and open to see how we can do that. I also think that having something that is a downtown, sort of directional connection for bikes going forward, not something that we can do instantly, right? But going forward would be a good idea, so maybe that's something we can talk about in our planning down the road, is making something where we have it barriers off the meds area, but also having something that connects with cycling closer to the downtown too. That's just my comments on it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And like I said, I mean, it is what it is. I just, let's keep it in mind if you do see people, like I said, try to have that discussion with them. I've had discussions with some people, and some people say, oh, and didn't realize, and I redirect them. Some people ask me if I'm with the city, and when I try to explain who I am, they sort of, a couple of them just said, well, and kept going on and said, well, we're gonna do it. I'm not gonna physically stop them, obviously, but I certainly think communication would be, up our communication on this will certainly help. And to say, even the signs I put up, a couple of days ago, hopefully that will help as well in the future. Okay.
I could chime in quickly on that. So I got Dave's email there on the weekend about seeing if we could modify the Google Maps thing. I thought it might be a little bit easier. You could just duplicate a location, add a second location. It looks like I have to start from scratch and add a whole second location, for lack of better words. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it because it needs a street address. But what I might do is just list it as a parking area, which is a workaround I did in the past. Anyways, I'm going to play with it. And my thoughts were I will just list the main trailhead that we have now seems to be working. But as the Elgar entrance there, I'll list it as the multi-use entrance or something of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for that.
I'll play around with it.
Okay, 8.3, Alana, French drain on Meds Mountain. Do we have a bit more of an update from a township perspective?
So I know Meredith indicated that the application had been signed. Wayne did that today. I spoke with him, and his hope was to try to get out there this week. I'm not sure how quickly the permits turn around. So he had indicated that with the snow, there might be a little bit of a delay just with the staff and having them get out there, but he has every intention of getting it done ASAP.
Okay, great. That'll make a real difference this winter without the ice skating rink there to get across to the trailheads. There's nothing else that we need to do as a committee?
No, I don't think so. I think it's he's got it all under control.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, hey, of interest, I just also found the Airbnb that's off the Millbrook Valley Trails there. The tiny house setup.
Oh.
Hold on, I'll try to share the link in Zoom.
Okay.
It looks quite nice.
Do you want to share your screen? I can stop sharing mine.
No, that's okay. I've got a million tabs open.
Okay.
Well, actually, I can think I can do that easy enough. Hold on one sec. You guys want to take a peek?
Is it actually on Airbnb site?
Yeah.
Or is it a different one? Okay.
Yeah, I just found it here. Let's see. Can you see now?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there we go. Pretty cool little setup. It's got a funny picture here. I'll show you guys. I just found it, so I just flipped through it quickly. But where is it? Hold on. It's got a funny picture of the trails. There's like a million photos.
So where is it situated?
There we go. 3 minutes to Millbrook Valley Trails this way. A 3-minute walk from the tiny house to Meadow Trail, one of the Millbrook Valley Trails system. Some other pictures. So it looks like when I look at the map,
So it's off the White Birch Road or something?
It must be. Yeah, I wonder if it's this house, one of these houses here where the split is.
Right.
I guess wherever the connection trail is that you saw there, Dave, or whoever's mentioning it with the paddle, would be a good indicator. But
yeah, well, it's not at the top of Meadow Extension. really in line with the farmer's field there, like down towards I'm getting confused on my east and west, towards the west end, towards Elgar. So it's probably 2/3 of the way up the hill. So my suspicion it was the last property on Elgar before Meadow Trail with a long driveway.
Yeah, there's 2 landlocked properties that are down between White Birch and the road allowance. I'm curious if somebody's utilizing one of those too. I don't know. I like the write up here. Our property borders the Millbrook Valley Trail System. The Millbrook Valley Trail has 5 routes ranging from 0.6 kilometers to 3 kilometers, some flat, some rolling hills. Nothing too challenging. Well, take offense at that. And yeah, they like that write up. Anyways, I just thought that was interesting. Let me see if I can. How do I cancel share? Oh, there we go. I can send it the link if anyone wants it. If anyone's interested in booking for the weekend, you know.
Okay.
But apparently 42 people have already stayed there.
All right, thanks. Okay, I sent you all the latest version of the trail brochure. So we had some comments back from the township after the last time we looked at it, just in terms of their standards and what do we call them, Alana? Visibility standards or something?
Clear print guidelines.
Clear print guidelines, there we go. So Rob at Big Sky has done a few changes. You can see he's removed the background on the trail descriptions. Because the feeling was that the text was a bit hard to read with the sort of imposed black and white extension of the picture. We've changed the colors of the trail names to match those on the map. And then Rob's going to do a couple other changes on the map itself, but that's generally what we're looking for. What we got so far in terms of the additions, the edits. He's still going to do edits on the other version, the vertical version of the brochure, because last meeting we had talked about that we would go with both and maybe print print a few hundred of both. And we can sort of go from there. But I think we're pretty much there in terms of being able to send these to print. So I don't know if anybody has any comments around that. There's a couple other things that a couple other edits I'm going to ask him to put on. We talked about putting a Facebook logo on. Find us on Facebook so that they would be able to log on to our Facebook webpage on Facebook. And maybe we've got some extra space there on the back panel in terms of the Welcome to the Millbrook Valley Trails. So we might be able to increase the font or add maybe a little bit more verbiage there.
Rob, just on that, do you know how much is still owing for the design and the printing, do you figure, for the brochures?
No, we've not received the bill yet from Big Sky, but we had advised them that the upset limit was it 1,500, Alana, or 7? I forget.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a ballpark after we pay that. What's left, because I know we talked about a few things that might be needed going forward with what we're doing for the trail work and in regards to the new stuff that we're doing, and wondered what would be left in the budget approximately after those things are taken out.
Maybe we can touch base tomorrow. I'll do another run of what's in the account currently, as well as the signage that's coming out and the small bills that I had received, and we can follow up with Big Sky and see if we can get an actual amount.
Yeah, sorry, not to get off topic on you, Rob, but I just know that that's probably the last major expenditure we had. And I know we talked about a few things like trail tools or chainsaws or things like that. And it really depends on how much is left, or extra gravel or things and wood, and depends on how much is left after that brochure and design and printing is paid for.
But do we need to spend that money by December 31st? Juan?
Yes.
Okay.
And I haven't heard any negativity about our request for 2021. So I would think that the amount that we've requested should be granted by council.
Okay, well, maybe I'll touch base with you tomorrow. Or you can let me know when you've had a chance to do that, and I can just compose an email out, and we can talk about via email any potential purchases.
Sure.
Could I ask a question?
Yep.
We're showing legend to come. Did we discuss differentiating between multi-use versus plain trails on the brochure itself? Like, on the legend, will it indicate where bikes are acceptable and where they aren't?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Just a couple questions in regard to the QR code. Where is that QR code going to point? It currently points to Wikipedia is the only thing I'm wondering right now. But
yeah, that's been put in there just as a what do we call it, stopgap or point of reference.
Placeholder?
okay.
Placeholder. Thank you.
Could we put a bold? We've got a lot more. I don't say a lot more, but a little bit more real estate on that. Could we put something bold on it? I'm just thinking. I walk up, I look at the pamphlet, and if I immediately see a giant QR code that says "Go here for a digital version of this brochure," then I'm just going to do that and then put the brochure back. Because
like I said, we've got more real estate there, so that's what I'm looking at, being able to make that bigger and maybe add a bit more verbiage around it. We're still, as Meredith said, it's still a question as to where these are going to be hosted and what sort of functionality and features we're going to be able to have with them. In terms of expanded trail descriptions and multimedia. Remember, again, we talked about having on the online version being able to include pictures from the Historical Society of the mill and the dam and the old rail bridge and all that sort of stuff, descriptions, and to enhance the sort of walking experience. So we're going to talk to the county about that in terms of hosting and what's going to be possible. But and in the interim, we can just that QR code can just point to the township website, and we're only going to have a few hundred brochures printed up just to get us through the winter. Or again, we can maybe decide to take that out altogether until we get all of that sorted out. But it's not going to be a permanent solution.
Gotcha. It would be great if we could get the trails to finally show up on Google Maps. I still wish I knew how we could do that, but I just did a check again to see, and it looks like we're still not on there. But in other news, we had 32,000 views last month.
Wow.
Oh, that's good.
That's a lot of people looking.
Wow.
32,000 views on Google.
Yeah, as like the Millbrook Valley Trails, Google Maps placeholder icon there. So it's saying that 32,000 people looked up it's called a business profile, but essentially our information.
Well, it has felt busy leading up to last weekend, so that's I'm not surprised.
That's cool. Unfortunately, no trails on there yet.
Right. Okay. Well, beyond our control, that one. Okay, John and/or Dave, do you want to talk about the Millbrook MTB?
Yep, I can do that. So we've created a mountain bike club here in Millbrook. And so there's mountain bike clubs in like a lot of different places around, typically around trailheads. There's Peterborough Cycling Club, Durham Mountain Bike Association, there's a Northumberland Cycling Club. So decided to create one in Millbrook. And it was in part because our trails are getting quite busy, and there's a large mountain biking presence, and kind of want to, I don't want to not to control it, but just to support it and just sort of have an official group that represents the mountain bike community. And so that can work both ways. That can represent mountain biking interests to the Millbrook community, and then that can also, be a source of feedback from the community to the mountain bike community, just through the club. And so that was one of the reasons for creating it. Also, like there are some things that John and I just sort of do on our own accord that might require insurance. Like I have a column that I like to write for the paper, and then we have some social media pages, and it just sort of seems like one of those things that like one day somebody, just you imagine the worst case scenario, it just seems good to have insurance. Another reason for creating it is that the insurance policy also covers trail building and trail maintenance and trail management. And so if there are gaps in what the Millbrook Valley Trails wants to consider their trail, and sort of doesn't want to consider other trails, then there's an opportunity for the club to come in and fill those gaps and just ensure that, everything has a steward. And so that was another reason for it. So there just sort of seemed to be a bunch of reasons this year why the timing felt right to create a club. So it's nothing to do with the township. It's incorporated it as a not-for-profit corporation called Millbrook MTB. And like I said, we have a $5 million insurance policy. It's membership-based. So anyone who wants to join the club pays $25 to join the club, and signs a liability waiver. And then that gives them, as club members, the trails are always free to use, but as club members, that gives us the chance to do, group rides, and, we can have an additional sort of base of volunteers that want to come out on work days, and we can promote that through our own channels and just provide more support to the trails that way. But again, it's all covered. But yeah, the group rides is something that we haven't been able to do, even though we would have liked to. People who are new to the area or new to the trails usually want to have someone show them around the first couple times, or if they're new to town, they might want to meet other people who are mountain bikers. And without insurance, it just seems to be the norm that you have insurance if you're going to offer any sort of publicly promoted group rides. So that was the other reason. In terms of our sort of official, our official reason for being, so we're going to promote and advocate for high quality mountain biking in this area. We're also able to design and construct and maintain local mountain bike trails under a $5 million insurance policy, organize social events, clinics, session and group mountain bike rides, and then also fundraise for mountain biking and other cycling related projects in the village of Millbrook and the surrounding area. So that's sort of another one that's like, so John and I had proposed a pump track idea to council, I think it was almost 3 years ago now. And, we do that just as like John and Dave think this is a good idea. But so now, that sort of thing is going to happen through the club going forward. And so that's a good example of something that doesn't fall into Millbrook Valley Trails, but it's tied to Millbrook Valley. It's tied to mountain biking, which is tied to the Millbrook Valley Trails. So it's a nice complement to our trail network. But yeah, it's just, things like that, it doesn't fall under council's interest or the Millbrook Valley Trails interest, but it's linked. And so we can step in to sort of to fill those gaps. Just seeing if I had anything else in my notes here. So yeah, our goal is to not set out to build new trails on our own. Our goal is to build trails and support the Millbrook Valley Trails network as it is, and like I said, fill in gaps as needed. So additional volunteer labor coming from the mountain bike community, potentially additional funds coming from the club. So if membership fees are meant to cover insurance, if we do well and get enough members, and there's extra money, and then that can be fed back into the trails at times, depending on the project. And possibly because we are a not-for-profit, that might open us up to new grant opportunities that otherwise aren't available to municipalities. So perhaps it's a new way of getting certain projects done. And I think that kind of sums it up. So we incorporated just at the beginning of this month and put out just an announcement on social media, so through Facebook and Instagram accounts, and created a bit of a small online store to sell memberships. And we've got about 50 memberships sold already. And then we're also doing some other things to fundraise on that site as well, like selling t-shirts and hats like I've done in the past. But again, now it's all sort of happening through the club. So we're off to a good start, and the goal is absolutely to work with and support this committee, in the long run and for years to come. So, the other thing I wanted to say was, just looking back at the last election cycle where, we lost a couple of committee members just through that process, that it's, if just the way the dice rolled or whatever, we lost mountain bike representation on the Millbrook Valley Trails Committee, then this would still provide some continuity for mountain biking in Millbrook as well. So lots of different reasons that sort of all came together as leading us to think that now was the right time to do this.
Great. Any questions for John or Dave? Or John, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Dave covered very thoroughly, did a great job, and we're excited. We've got a lot of people in the community excited about supporting the support, and I think there's going to be a lot of great things to come. And I think one of the challenges we've had as a trail committee is we've got a lot of great people, but there's always limited resources when it comes to volunteers to getting work and jobs done. And I think this is really going to work alongside with the Millbrook Valley Trails to create some great community incentives going forward. And I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
I should add, there's one other individual involved whose name's Brad Cathray, and he's not on the committee, although he has applied, I think, a couple times to be on the committee. So there's 3 of us at this point.
Okay. Well, it all sounds great, guys.
Mm-hmm. Sounds exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about inviting local places like the Airbnb that we've just found, and what is Westmacott House called now? Field and Stream or something like that. To really promote trail use, both pedestrian and bicycle, beyond just having our pamphlets in their places, and making people aware through them that there is a local bike club. Would the bike club be available to help other clubs arrange bike tours here?
We'd be insured for that sort of thing as long as the liability waiver is signed. Then you can do that sort of thing. It'd be a matter of finding the available people to run that sort of, like, to run a tour. But yeah, that could happen.
I'm just interested because at the Algar entrance on a couple of occasions, I've met, a couple folks with SUVs full of bikes, and they've said that they're staying actually in Lakefield and just going on all the local trails that they can find. They like the Millbrook trails the best, and it just seemed a shame if we've got the best trails that our local B&Bs aren't getting the business, you know, that they might have gotten. Now, everything's changed since COVID, of course, but it might be something to look forward at in terms of drumming up, you know, real economic sort of promotion for the community.
Through you, Rob, if it's okay. Yeah, I think it's a great idea going forward. We've been kind of running one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake more because the trails have gotten so popular. But we want to, you know, not have any problems with social distancing and COVID and things. But going forward, I think, you know, Dave and I talked about forming relationships, whether it's with Shimano, whether it's with, you know, other cycling related businesses or other businesses in the community, you know, especially if they're interested in, you know, doing any kind of sponsorship or cross promotion that would help both, you know, the Millbrook MTB non-for-profit and also help their business. I think those conversations would be great going forward.
I think also to add, it's been quite a crazy year. I mean, obviously with COVID and the increase in trail users in general, but with all of that combined with the work that's happened in the Ganaraska, which is drawing people in itself, we've got it's just really busy, and it's a lot of new people coming for the first time who just had never heard of the Millbrook Valley Trails, or maybe they'd heard of the Ganaraska, but they're thinking of the old Ganaraska where it wasn't maintained, and just all of a sudden in the last year, it's becoming a destination. So I think we're in a real, because of COVID, but also because of everything else, this is a real kind of growing pain stage that we're either entering or in the middle of. I'm not sure if it's just the beginning or if it's peaking right now. It's hard to say, but yeah, there's definitely some stuff to work through and some opportunities probably for some people and some challenges for, I think, us as a committee and maybe residents of Millbrook as well, as we sort of face growing tourism and decide whether or not we like it. That's another factor. Do we want to keep pushing for more, or is it kind of good the way it is, or is it already too busy? You know, I don't know. Anyway, all questions or discussions to be had, but it is this year in particular. Everyone is just kind of showing up and discovering it, and the word is spreading. So it'll die down for the winter, but it's going to be, I think, a really busy spring.
Okay. Great. John, you had a concern around our liability with the library partnership.
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute here. Yeah, it was just, I just wanted to make sure we had checked with council that it was appropriate to go ahead with this. I guess my concern is if we're increasing use at times a year when the trails may be a little muddier or a little icier. And so anyway, that was just my concern, that we don't get ahead of ourselves on this. And but talking to Alana, she didn't seem to think there were problems. So I'll let either her or Matt speak to it, I guess, and then I'd be happy.
If I could talk to something on that, Rob, I think the group that was doing that from the library, because of my position on the BIA, has decided to, and again, clarify with them, but they decided to do something, John, where they were going to go through and do kind of a scavenger hunt type thing with things posted in local businesses downtown, as opposed to the trails as the conditions got worse. Okay. To not try to walk on the icy trails, I guess, in January, February with families doing those tours. But that was just wanted to put that in there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, from a liability standpoint, I don't think that concern is one that we are more or less engaged in. But you know, in revisiting the email after I had a conversation with John this afternoon, I think, you know, where not from a liability standpoint, but just, you know, more from just an individual or concern standpoint would be, you know, the trails are wilderness trails, and the classification thereof and the risks of using thereof are a reality for that people should be well aware of. You know, when we're talking about seniors in particular, you know, they should be well aware of the status or difficulty of the trails, whether they're accessing them for any purpose, whether it be a scavenger hunt or anything. And obviously you can layer on the seasonal changes and you know, different risks that are associated with the weather conditions, etc. So from a liability standpoint, no, I don't think the township does have a growing concern. But that said, you know, these are wilderness trails, and not all of them are conducive to, you know, traversing. You know, I'm just thinking of my own grandparents, etc. Like, what, it's not necessarily something that's within their capability. Now, if there's going to be chaperones with them, etc., then, you know, that's obviously, that can be done. But as long as there's an understanding and communication of that to the individuals that are going to be involved, like, should, you know, there not be a representative from MVT there, and, you know, they're still going to try to facilitate these, as, you know, as Melanie sort of alluded to here, as long as that's, you know, obviously made clear to everyone involved, then, you know, then there's really no issue. But my concern isn't from a liability or township standpoint. It's more just from, you know, senior individuals and being sure that they're up to the challenge, put it that way.
Is it, I mean, I appreciate what you just said, but my understanding was that this is all for kids anyway, isn't it part of the library program and scavenger hunt for kids?
Well, that's just, when I went back to the email, I wanted to make sure, because I remembered reading it the first time, and it was, if you go into the bullet points, Rob, they talk about, you know, seniors worried about falling, new community members accessing the trails and stuff like that, with regards to that was with the library specifically. So I thought, I've heard it discussed about being more directed towards kids, but then when I went back to it, I'm like, well, that's not exactly how that initial email read to me. But I wasn't involved with those conversations between the two of you, so maybe there's a myriad of different types of programs, and maybe 1 week it'll be seniors and 1 week it could be children. I'm not sure.
Right.
But
the only, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But everything I've seen Melanie put up there is like little scavenger hunts for kids with,
sure.
I think it's based on, you know, phonetics. So like they find a sign that says C, and then there's a whole bunch of, you know, cat and cookies and, you know, that type of thing listed on the thing. So I'm not sure how many seniors are partaking in that. But.
Yeah, sure.
There was the mention of it supporting or being a co-run event with CMHA, with the Canadian Mental Health Association, and that I think was more aimed toward adults, not necessarily seniors, but some seniors too, who were really feeling shut in and who felt that they needed to be out. Now, it's unfortunate that didn't start earlier in the summer, because I think we would have been able to weed out those people who really can't go on the trails at all, other than perhaps the rail bed, and those who can take on a little bit more terrain, and there would have been an opportunity to teach them what they needed in terms of you know, equipment, whether it be walking sticks or cleats or whatever. And of course, there'd be 3 months at least where we wouldn't want to have them out at all, seniors in particular. So, and then there's lots of opportunity to walk around town. That's quite beautiful. And the sidewalks are well kept. So we could still have CMHA programs through the library related to adults that would comply and be outside and could show people the actual entrances to the trails, even though the trails can't be used. during that season. So it would still be useful, I think.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Follis, does that satisfy you?
I'm fully satisfied. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Alana, you wanted to go over potential dates for 2021?
Yeah, so I've just, let's see if I can bring it up here. So I've just gone through based on the fourth Monday of each month. Now, May the 24th happens to be the long weekend, so I've put in for the 31st. I'm happy to be flexible the weekend before, the weekend after, or the Monday before, the Monday after, depending on what everybody wants to do. I have set them for 5 o'clock based on our last survey, but again, you know, we can be flexible as we move forward if we need to change those times, depending on how long we're doing it via Zoom and if we get the opportunity to meet back in person. So really, it was just establishing the dates and then the trail reports. I know Craig and John, I've got you in there as you have 3 opportunities, just the way that it flowed through, but if somebody else wanted to do that, we can always modify there as well.
Okay.
I wonder if I could switch to May, just because April's a bit too early for me to do the dog strangling vine assessment. So if I switch to May, I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
I'm fine with switching that with you, Maureen, if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Will you send that out as part of the minutes?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Could I hate to get picky with it too, but is there any chance, I see I've got one for September. The March one's going to be difficult for me until May 31st. I'm going to be living about an hour away from Millbrook, so I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get up in March to do trail reporting.
Do you want to, John, do you and I want to switch with them for that?
It'd be okay with me, sure.
I could do June with John. I mean, that puts me at 2 months in a row, but
Yeah, that's fine. So I'll put Rob and David for March, and Alex, you're okay to do in June with John?
sure. All right, does nobody do any trail reports through the summer? I know, not official reports, but is that still assigned through the summer? I can't remember.
We just never have a meeting to report on it. So I think historically there's probably been enough activity that it hasn't really been an issue.
Gotcha. Anyways, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay.
Good.
So Alana and I will meet at some point in the coming days to talk about what our budget looks like, and I'll send an email out and we can talk about potential purchases before fiscal year end, December 31st. There was mention of an electric chainsaw to match our tools already, a Milwaukee tool set, which we thought might be handy. We are now out of screening at the township yard. The works department kindly moved all the screening to the ditch on the 4th line trail, which we didn't use at all during our mini workday last month, but it's a great location to have it there just for future use. It's out of the way, and it's very easy to get to and move into the trails via wheelbarrow, etc. So there's potential new tools. John mentioned trail tools, gravel, if we need gravel. We're okay for wood. We've got about 50 or 60 pieces of wood. We're not going to be able to really get wood anyway until June, which time we'll have a new budget. But we've got enough to build even a bridge if we needed to, probably in the spring. John, you want to add something?
Craig and I had a conversation. I don't know if you want to chime in a little more on it, Craig, but Craig mentioned maybe in some of the uses, instead of limestone screening, he thought maybe like a pea gravel or something might be a better option. And that's kind of why I mentioned that to you. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Craig, or maybe we could, if the budget allows, maybe have both to use in different situations.
Yeah,
Last I checked.
I only mentioned that because I don't think I was thinking pea gravel. I was thinking more just gravel or a gravel.
Okay.
Is that in
Gravel.
some of the spots, like I've noticed, like limestone screening tends to get quite hard, but sometimes it doesn't move the water through. So in some areas, I just noticed it's almost like it's ponding or getting maybe defeating. And again, I don't know what the purpose is. I think it's maybe more of a material to use maybe for mountain biking, but I've just noticed sometimes it's not allowing the water to move through as much as if you put gravel down. I think gravel would be cheaper too, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, screening is actually cheaper, but it's not much.
Oh, is it?
It's a couple of dollars difference a yard.
Yeah.
Right. Just something to think about in some spots where I've noticed it.
Okay. I mean, this may be a bit off topic, Matthew, Alana, but do we need to buy gravel now? Does the township not own a gravel pit? What's the situation with that?
We do own the gravel bit. We could inquire as to what the rate that we would. I don't know if we are in the business of selling it that often. It's more about subsidizing the gravel needs that we would also already have as a municipality. But that said, being a committee of council, we could inquire as to if that was a possibility. Atlanta might have a better sense of that than I do.
I don't really know at this time, but I can definitely ask Wayne.
That's just fine. I mean, I would assume what you're pulling out is 3/4 crushed gravel anyway. And like you said, pea gravel would be more the norm. But
Pea gravel's super expensive, I think, isn't it?
It's not that bad. We wouldn't need the good stuff like they use for garden beds and stuff. Okay, is there anything else that people may think people have any pressing urgency to potentially purchase before December 31st? No? Okay, well, we can have a discussion over email. But as I say, we'll see how much is left in the bucket, and at this point, we're not going to need any real materials until the new year anyway, until probably the snow goes. But again, if there's money left, we can look at potentially spending it. Okay, any other questions or comments or anything else anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn for the evening?
Craig, before we go, what was the name of that Peterborough Public Access GIS that you?
I think if you Google Peterborough County Public GIS, you'll get right to it.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing, Rob, that I just wanted to bring up is the subcommittee. Is there, any next steps that was talked about at the last meeting about dates to get together for that, or what's happening with that? I know Craig put that together. I think there was yourself and John Follis, and I think I'm not sure if there's anybody else. I know Hillary and I expressed an interest maybe coming on later if they needed more people, but is there any update on that?
No, I think we'll probably, I would aim to meet before the end of the year. Just sort of a bunch of other stuff going on, but it's still on the books. So yeah, I hope we can get something that suits Craig and Mr. Follis. Then we can maybe get something on the books before the end of December. Just have an initial conversation.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Craig?
Yeah, sounds great.
Don?
Should do, yep.
Okay, great. I'll let you know by email. Okay, well, this will be our last meeting then until January, correct? So I want to thank everybody for their dedication this year. I know it's been a bit of a different year for everything, but in terms of the way that we've been able to meet and talk and do our work outside. But thank you everybody for the dedication and the perseverance and their attendance at these meetings. It really makes a difference. And I think as Dave attested to, it's been busy on the trails, and I don't think that's just due to the fact that it's COVID. I think it's the fact that we are such a dedicated group of volunteers, and the trails are a real treasure for the village and the township and the area as a whole, and that reflects on each one of you. So thank you very much, and I know we'll be in touch prior to the end of the year, but everybody continue to stay safe, and hopefully, though I don't think we'll be able to meet in person come January, there may be some hope that we will be able to meet in person at some point in 2021. So thanks again. And does anybody, or would anybody like to make the adjournment, the motion for adjournment?
I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's been on the committee and this year and the work they've done, and congratulations to all of us for hanging together. And that includes staff, of course. And
of course, yes. Thank you very much to the staff, for Matthew, for your diligence in researching what we're able and not able to do, and certainly Elena for the same, and doing the meetings and keeping us all organized. It's very much appreciated.
It's been really hard, John, without your wife's Christmas cookies at the meeting this year.
Sure.
Everybody enjoyed
we have a box ready to go. We're headed off to the kids' place again tonight to babysit. So I'd share them over the picture, but I haven't got one.
And Meredith, thanks very much for getting the $1,000 for the French drain. That was a nice Christmas present.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
It really has been treacherous crossing that field.
I'll share that with Dan. He's responsible for that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
John, seconded by Mr. Wallace. All in favor?
Yeah.
All right, thanks very much everybody. Have a great evening.
See you
Bye,
around.
everyone.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Happy holidays.